Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final panel of the SGDA Summit of 2021. I'm Riley Park, and I'm joined by our audio panelists. They are Daniel Kim, Javon Rammer, and Shawnee Jang, and Kareem Schumann. Would you folks please introduce yourselves approximately in that order? So starting with Daniel.
Cool. Hi, my name is Daniel Kim. I'm a skin sound designer on League of Legends at Riot Games. I've been at Riot for a little less than 2 years now, and I'm mainly working as a skin sound designer, so I make skins for some champions that come out.
Hi.
Javon?
Okay. Hi, my name is Javon Rammer. I am a senior sound designer at Riot Games. I work specifically on League of Legends on the Champions team. I've been at Riot for about 5 years, 3 of which was spent on the skins team before I went over to the Champs team.
Hello, I'm Shawnee Jang. I'm a composer and sound designer based in Seattle, Washington. Right now, I'm working as an audio designer for Microsoft.
Hi, my name is Kareem Schumann. I'm a technical dialogue designer on the audio team at Bungie. I'm also the lead of the employee resource group called Black at Bungie, and I'm the president of the Bungie Diversity Committee.
That's awesome. I'd love to hear more about that down the line. I'll be sure to ask about it. But for now, here's a question that I'm sure you get all the time is like, well, how did you get here? How'd you get to where you are? What's your path into the games industry like? Do you start as like a musician and go like, oh, but what if games sounds? Or were you just like games all the way? How was it like for you folks? Anyone can go. We're not doing the questions in any particular order. But.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh no, not this. Oh god. Okay. Yeah, I'll do a quick one. I'm relatively new to this industry. I grew up enjoying writing my own music when I was young. So in college, I just naturally took on music composition as like my only thing. But I never really thought that like game audio was a possible career choice until my junior year in college when I saw a poster for a video game development club on my campus. So I was like, hey, I'm introverted. I never usually go to like these like social stuff, but I'll try going to this one. And turns out it's just like filled with people who love making video games, love playing video games, and it all just kind of started from there for me. How about you, Javon?
Oh yeah. I'm pretty much along the same lines. I started off doing music, went to school for music production actually. While I was there, I found out about sound design specifically for post-production at first. And then it really dawned on me. I was like, oh, I could do video games. That's sick. But at first I was like, oh, I can't do that. That's too much for me. Like you have to look coding and all these crazy things. I'm just like too smooth brain for that. I'm gonna stick with my other stuff. Not saying that post-production is smooth brain, but later on, once I graduated and I was working at a studio for a while, my roommates actually were like, hey, you should go check out GDC. You like video games, you should go check out what that whole environment is like. So like actually going there and meeting folks like Karim and like learning more about the industry and like, hey, this is like actually a legit thing that you could like do. I was like, I'm hooked. I'm 100% hooked.
Shawnee, do you have any? You want to talk about how you got to this moment in your career?
Yeah, so my passion has been always about like composing, but I didn't really think that I would be getting a job in music, like because I was born and raised in Korea until I was 20. So I went to college for English education, and I got a ticket to America just to save for it like 3 months to just enjoy America. And I realized that I can see myself doing something like film scoring or something audio here. Like I feel like there's more opportunity here. So I was looking for a film scoring program. And then I learned about this new program at DigiPen about music and sound design. So that's how I got into game audio, and I fell in love with it.
That's awesome. I actually relate to that in a lot of ways because I've loved video games since I was a kid, but I never, for most of my life, I didn't consider it to be a career option. I was planning to go into medicine for a very long time. So I graduated college with a degree in biology, and I took the MCATs, and I was on a medical master's program and all this stuff. And I sort of at some point decided I didn't want to do that. And I started working full time and stuff that I wasn't passionate about, and trying to figure out what I wanted to actually do with my life, and trying to figure out what all my interests aligned into. I like to DJ, I like to music and sounds and microphones and studios and stuff, but I love technical work and computers. How does that all fit together? Video games. And once I had that clicked moment, and it was all about trying to figure out the best path to get from there to actually doing that work full time. And for me, that meant taking online courses that were affordable and worthwhile, and then attending GDC, meeting other professionals, picking their brain, and sort of getting a sense of where I needed to go, what future steps made the most sense. Started doing indie work, moved to Seattle, and then started doing full-time QA work. And then when I started working at Bungie 5+ years ago, I've really found a home there, and so it's been smooth sailing ever since.
Awesome. All right. I want to ask, what's like one of the proudest moments you've had in your guys' careers? Or maybe it doesn't have to be the proudest. It could be like, what, like another way to frame it is, what's like a most memorable moment? Like, have there been any horror stories as audio designers? Let's I'll just throw in, like, let's start with Javon, if you got one.
Yeah. Proudest moments. I'd honestly, it's gonna sound a little cheesy. It would actually be getting the job at Riot. Up until that point, so I was working in the music industry at that point, at a studio as a runner, and trying to do that track, and then like transitioned over. And like up until that point, going to GDC, learning about the industry, and the amount of like, you know, rejection over rejection, getting to that final point where it's just like, hey, that's actually pretty good. You want a job here? And be like, oh my God, I did it. So it was a lot of that trial and error. Like, it really made it all feel worth it. So like, I would say that's probably one of my proudest moments.
Yeah, I could follow up after. I had a different answer, but after hearing Javon's, I realized that's probably my proudest moment too. But another proud moment was when I shipped my, I think, second ever skin, Mecha Kingdoms Leona, and there was a player who was like, I think his name is Aoki. He just plays Leona in Challenger level support Leona, and he was like playing the game, and with this new skin, he was like, "Oh my God, this is the best sounding skin!" And watch this, the ultimate sounds so cool, you guys. And I was just like, "Oh my God!" For me, it's like when I make something and it actually makes other people happy. I think that is like my moment of like joy, the most amount of joy that can come out of it, and it just made me really proud and happy to be, yeah, putting good stuff out there for people to enjoy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for me, I feel like there's so many proud moments in the work that I get to do, for sure. Always pleased when we make a deadline and, you know, team feels good about the content we've made, and one way or another, it's going out into the world, and that's always a great feeling, seeing your name in the credits, stuff like that. But for me, when I was really thinking about what really has the biggest emotional impact on me, feeling of pride, it's when my coworkers have nice things to say about me and my work, because I look up to so many people on this audio team that I work with at Bungie. There's some really impressive people that have been in the industry so much longer than I've been, and I feel like if when someone says, "Hey, this voice you've been working on, this really come together, really cool. I don't think I would have thought of that," you know, and I'm just sort of like, oh my God, like that to me are the moments where I sort of, I can go home today, you know, like that's it, I did it, you know, nothing's gonna top that for the day. So yeah, just the people I collaborate with, and I feel like we're our own harshest critics, the audio folks. So if you get the other audio people nodding along to your work and being like, that was a nice one, that one always, you know, resonates with me.
For me, I think it's when I was on Minecraft team. I was originally hired just to do sound design for Minecraft Earth, the mobile AR game. and we had a chance to showcase our game at a huge event that was for Microsoft called Microsoft Inspire. It's like an in-person showcase in Las Vegas, Bellagio 2 years ago, I think. And we made a special level that we built Minecraft Bellagio hotel with the whole waterfall show. And nobody told us, as they thought we don't need special audio. It will just use like fireworks sounds that we have for this water show. And they turned out that it was not going to work. And they called me saying, hey, can you do something cool for this? So I decided to I had like 30 minutes to an hour. And I just like, okay, I'll try to do something. And I opened my session and I just wrote some, I don't know, Disney-like Bellagio water showy music, like orchestra thing. And that basically led me to composing actual soundtrack for the game. And that was also arranged by Super Smash Brother people. And that kind of led me to this job right now at the Microsoft Mixed Reality team. So I think that was a cool moment.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, I love that. All right, so here's a bit of a disclaimer. I am not an audio person, but I would love to hear about like what's like your sort of day-to-day look like. What are you working with? Like, are you just in front of the computer all day, like looking at sounds, or are you composing music for your games? What's it look like for you folks? Do I have to go grab someone? Let's see. Daniel, go, start.
Yeah. Oh God. We are usually sitting in front of our computer most of the times. Me specifically as a skin sound designer, I usually have a champion or a skin that I'm working with. So I have a video capture of it, and I have my digital audio workstation on, and I'm usually just kind of like putting sounds together, layering sounds, and creating new assets. Um, Sometimes, rarely, there are opportunities for us to go out and like actually record Foley stuff. Personally, I've just been using mostly library stuff because we already have so much stuff in our library, and other champion designers before us like created so many cool sounds that we could work with, like Nunu, Kaisa. Javon also made some cool Academia sounds that I always go back and like use for like if I need anything like zappy and like explosive. But yeah, it's just like that. And we sometimes go out and socialize. Sometimes we step out of our cave and we talk with other people. But usually we're just in front of our computers most of the time. I don't know. Maybe it's different for other people.
How big is, like, I guess the follow up for you, Daniel? How big is like your team? Do you like report to like an audio manager type person?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a really cool manager. His name is Marco. He's managing a total of 5 of us, I think, on the skins team. And on the champion team, there are, I think, 3 or 4. Correct me if I'm wrong, Javon. 3 people. Yeah, and yeah, we all report to our boss, Matteo. He's a cool Italian dude. He's just yeah, but it doesn't really feel like that kind of like a structure system here. Even though we have a pretty big audio team at Riot, it just feels like a bunch of like friends get together and make stuff and listen to each other's stuff. Yeah, and there's sound designers, composers, and then VO designers. We all kind of like are inside of this huge house that works on like League of Legends content. And then there's other games as well, like Valorant, Legends of Runeterra, and etc.
Right. Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. Do any other folks have any thoughts on what's your like day-to-day activities like as a sound designer or audio designer?
Yeah, my day-to-day is pretty different. Being on the dialogue focus side of things, a lot of the work is collaborative first and foremost with the narrative team at Bungie, those who are crafting the story and writing the scripts for what the characters are going to be saying. And then we we have vendors that we work with who handle the recording sessions in studios before COVID-19, and now a lot of it's remote sessions where we work with either the equipment they have at home if they already have a nice setup, or we ship them good gear if they don't, and we've been doing that remotely for the last couple of years, or year and a half now, I guess. The recording sessions occur, and then we get the files delivered back to us, and then it's a lot of automation work and pipeline work to try and get things processed from the raw content to how we want it to sound in game. And working on a live game like Destiny, you have a limited amount of time. Always deadlines are always on the horizon, and it's sort of you're constantly shipping. And then once we have that new content that's sounding the way that we want to, it's all about implementation, hooking it up, getting everything functioning, working with the QA team to play through the content, and finding bugs and fixing bugs, and making sure that the quality mark is where you want it to be based on the experiences you were trying to create. So that's sort of a cycle. A lot of it is in front of our computers these days, especially since we're working from home. But in the office, there's a decent number of meetings and remote sessions with, these recording sessions with our vocal talents would often be in LA or in New York or wherever the talent is. We would meet them where they are, but we would usually stay in our location and have a remote connection there and talk them through it. So yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah, to kind of jump off of that too, there's a lot of on a day-to-day, there's a lot of syncing with folks, getting like alignment and like, hey, this is the thing we want to do, this thing we're going to focus on, like sweet, and then you jump into that, and then you get the whole feedback process starts, and a lot of that. So it's like there's also the craft related stuff that we work on, but then there's also like the communication and team work that we also have to work in every day on top of the creative stuff that we have to do, which is pretty much that makes up the entirety of the day. Not even talking about the side projects. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes with that, but yeah.
I feel like, especially with the COVID, I feel like my day is the time with meetings and things, because you can't just walk up and talk to people. And also with our team, we're not working on one game for a long time, but we have a lot of projects for mixed reality, from prototype to like demos. So we have a lot of different teams that we work with. So all the stand-ups and syncs for that. And sometimes I'll even not open my doc. I'll just be reviewing the designer spec and going over like, how can we make sure that we have spatial audio? And it's just writing and talking. And sometimes I make lots of button sounds for the corporate apps, or sometimes I get to do music. So it's really different day to day.
Awesome. All right. So I imagine this is going to be pretty different for each of you, but what is your interactions like with other departments at your teams or studios? So Kareem, you mentioned like you're interacting a lot with the narrative folks, and Javon and Daniel, you mentioned you're working with like skin teams, for example, or you'll usually have like art, for example. So how do you work with like the other departments at your places?
Yeah, working with other departments outside of audio is always really interesting. Communication is key because, how do you describe the thing how do they describe the thing in their head that they've already imagining of how they want something to sound? And how are you going to describe in the terminology that but that they have no necessary, why would they understand what reverb is, or what delay is, or something like that? You're like, oh yeah, I'll put like a really nice delay on it, it'll sound really ethereal, and I'll put some sparkle effects on it and stuff. It'll have this nice shimmer, and you can just see their eyes glaze over of like, I have no idea what this person is talking about. And they sort of, so it's a lot of trying to reference things that, you know, are real, like things that already exist in other games or other medium, to go, do you want it to sound more like this character? How do you want it to make you feel? I lean on that one a lot. A question I find myself asking all the time, especially because I focus on implementation, is what is the desired player experience? Do you want the player to be interacting with this thing and a voice comes in over the radio? Or do you want the thing to be talking to them? Or do you want it to sound spooky? Do you want it to sound, you know, what's the mood? What's the intent? What's the experience? And then when because I'm mostly working with narrative storytelling folks, that's something that they can latch onto. Oh yeah, this thing is a mystical object and it should come from them and sound mystical, and it should be, you know, not necessarily spooky, but godlike, you know, and they're like, okay, yeah, I got a lot from that. And those are really important techniques that I've learned. And for us, it's a lot about trying to do, every time we try to do something new, that takes up a lot of cycles and work to try and figure out the new thing. With Destiny, a long-standing game franchise like this, when we're doing something that we already know how to do, it's more content in the same vein. That's easy and streamlined, and we know exactly how to estimate that and schedule it out. But when someone goes, I want it to do something interesting and weird that we've never done before, that's when you're like, hold up, we need to really understand what that means, and clarify it. Otherwise, it might not make it into the game, because if we run out of time and it doesn't sound good, that's when stuff starts getting cut, you know. So all really important skills.
Yeah, I feel like on the other end, I'm very guilty of going to like an audio designer. It's like, yeah, I have this character and I don't know how to say how they sound. Maybe you come up with something that's like, no, that's no good. But thank you so much for help, like giving some advice there. I think that that's definitely an invaluable skill. Would anyone else like to tackle? How are your interactions like with other departments other than audio designers at your places?
Yeah, sure. The one thing is like you have the two sides of it, of just like, you kind of like what Kareem was saying, is it's like you want to talk about the thing that you're going to do, but dumb it down to the point that like people, like everybody could, I said dumb it down, but I mean like simplify it. I should say word simplify. That's a better word to use. Simplify it so that people, like everybody feels included and understands. Because like on one hand, you are the holder of that, craft, so you kind of like have to make sure that's translated and everybody kind of understands what you're trying to do. But they also need to understand and like be able to get that information and be like, oh, okay, that's what that means, that's what, because that's kind of like your duty. So it's like there was one time where I walked in to a review and somebody was like, oh yeah, no, that's cool, there's a lot of low end there, you could probably like cut a little. I was like, wait, that's exactly correct. Who told you this? But it's like, it's kind of like that, like repetitive of just like kind of like including them in the conversation and using the proper terms with alongside them, because like it holistically informs like how things happen. And like collaborating with like other disciplines like animation and VFX and all that fun stuff, like it really helps a lot to work with them, because there's moments where like, oh, you do the animation this way, cool, it looks great, but when I do sound to it, it'd be really much more fun if we had a little bit more anticipation, like here and here, because like sonically I could do this. It'd be like, oh cool, I'm gonna totally spread that out, and they're like, cool, yeah, we made a cool moment together. So there's so many gains to have to like working with folks, but like in ways that they also understand, but that they could, like, you could teach them, but they could also teach you, so that when you go into the next scenario, it's just like, oh, you're blocking, got it, understand what you mean, I'll hold off from touching anything until you get a little bit closer to like splining or something. It's like, oh cool, I kind of understand what this terms and everything means.
Shawnee, do you have anything to say about interacting with other teams or other departments other than audio folks?
Yeah, I can really relate a lot to explaining terms, because I remember our team putting together like an audio spec for this social virtual reality app that they're making, and they had like great plans for like musical concerts, hosting things. And so we said we need this kind of speaker setup. We need to have like a good streaming, sample rate and blah, blah. And then after submitting the spec, they're like, can you explain it from like how the audience will benefit from all these features, because we don't understand what is sample rate. So we had to rewrite the spec so that they can understand like this, like having stereo or surround sound means blah, blah, blah when you're having music concerts, those kind of things. And when we're working with different teams, we have project manager for each team and they come up with a task. And a lot of the times they don't really know what audio they need for the app. So it's our responsibility to, kind of just go to the meetings and see what they're trying to do. And I think it's a lot of self-motivation and being proactive and figuring out what audio is needed for each project.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that,
Designers and project managers.
Yeah, I agree with what Shani said. I think there's a lot of also communication, like Kareem said, is really, really important. I like to go to actually like meetings that sometimes I'm not required to go to, or like there's definitely not gonna be much discussion about audio here, but they're more talking about like, hey, what is this new skin line going to be like? What is the power source, or what are some of the inspirations, or about this skin thematic that we're working on. If I'm just like on the wall in the back there and just kind of listening, and sometimes I take notes. Sometimes there's like these like really like unique gems that come out of it that I could later use, and it's important to make sure audio doesn't get just like left behind, because we're oftentimes at the end of our roadmap. Whenever we're working on a product, we usually get it after everything else is done, like VFX or animation. So we have to actually be proactive and try to be the ones to kind of like suggest cool new features that this new skin's gonna do or this new game's gonna have, and always try to be like, hey, would you like this kind of sound? And yeah, if you could show even like multiple variations to them, it's very easy for them to pick out, oh, this one, I really like the sound of this one, rather than trying to be like, hey, so do you want it to sound sparkly or do you want it to sound like low end heavy? Like they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, sometimes explaining is like very hard. You know that saying, picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, audio is worth 1,000 words, or I don't know if that makes sense, but just show them cool stuff and they'll be like, because everyone's born with usually 2 pairs of ears. Sometimes they have more than 2, but one pair of ears, sorry, 2 ears or 1 pair of ears. And everyone knows what good stuff sounds like, oh, that sounds really cool. So yeah, just make them listen to your cool stuff.
Got it. Yeah, I think
I
a
want to
go for
jump
it.
in too, because I really like what Daniel was saying about meetings as well, and like going to stuff that you don't have to necessarily. It's like part of your core loop. When I was more in the office, I haven't been able to do as much because it requires more setup from home. But in the office, if I was having a slow day or I didn't have a ton on my plate, I would go to playtests a lot in the studio that would be happening all the time in different areas of the office for new content that's being worked on, and just attending those. And I can provide feedback as just like as a player, and talk about the stuff that I'm excited about for new content we're working on. But more importantly, I can get a sense of some of the new stuff that people are preparing, and I can start considering ideas or pitches of things that dialogue may want to start trying to do to better create a better player experience around that new content. That stuff that before they come to us and ask for scheduling and features, I can already have something in mind and say like, oh yeah, I've been to a playtest of that. It's really exciting. I think we're going to want to do something interesting here with A, B, and C if we have the time. And yeah, opportunities like that are great, exactly because of what Daniel said. We're late in the process of development, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be included in those conversations if you can. So jumping in and forging ahead when you can is like can create such brand new opportunities that weren't there before.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that it's a common thread in a lot of these panels is when you're working with other teams or departments, you got to communicate. And it's really cool to hear how you folks are thinking when you're communicating with those folks, other folks. So really quick, we're getting a few audience questions. I'll be trying to get more of those at towards the end, but one that was very relevant to the current conversation that I think you folks could answer almost in about a word. Everett asks on the Discord, which departments do you find you work most with? Art, programming, narrative, or an even mix? You touched on it a little bit, but just very quickly, which ones do you interact with the most?
For me, well, what skins is like we all have we work in this thing called a pod. So it's a team of one person from each department. So there's a VFX artist, an animator, a concept artist, and tech artist, and we like an audio designer, and we all kind of get into this one pod and work together. So I work with all of them, but specifically I'm usually working either with animators because they're working on a recall animation, and I'm like I have to sync my timing to them, or a VFX artist who is working on this cool sparkly explosions, and yeah, their stuff I directly make my sounds off of. So we have like a close connection with them. So if you have any VFX artist friends, you should hit them up and be like, hey, you want to work on something together?
And so Kareem, it sounded like you work mostly with narrative folks.
Yeah, definitely a lot with narrative. We also have an NPCs team at Bungie, which is focused on more. We have a cinematics team that we work specifically with, in terms of dialogue. We have NPCs team, which focuses on these standalone animated moments. We call them vignettes and vendor performances a lot. We also have engineering team, which works on our tools, especially. We have to collaborate with them if we want our tools to improve at all and try and communicate the areas that we most want to see improvements on. And then because we're using more about dialogue on my side of things. It's less with syncing with VFX and stuff, and it's more about these animated sequences and scheduling and stuff, and making sure that if we're animating visuals of characters' mouths moving and stuff to dialogue, that we have all the pieces prepared in time, and everybody knows sort of how it's going to go. So those are the teams I spend most of my time communicating with outside of audio.
All right, Shawnee, what team do you work most with other than audio?
I think probably designers and technical designers, because for a lot of the demos and prototypes, they're the ones who's driving all the flow in the app. And I'll talk to them, see where I can go in and hook the audio things up. And sometimes also with the animators, because animation means we need to sync the audio to the animation. So we'll be doing a lot of file sharing so that they'll send me the video files that I can design the sound off of and do the sound design for that.
Awesome. Javon, how about you? What type of departments do you work with most? Do you work with pods as well? I guess that's a good starting
yeah.
point.
Mine is a little bit. I'm not gonna say weird. Mine kind of fluctuates depending on more on the like which one, because like I'm on champions team, so I do more of the new character stuff. So like there's a lot more setup involved with that one. So I find myself working a lot more with design and engineering, trying to proof out new features if we're trying to do something new with a character, or like ensuring that, hey, this moment is like accurately represented via audio, if it meets like gameplay requirements and all that fun stuff. More often than not, I do interact a lot with VFX and animation, but I would say I spend most of my time talking with QA towards the end, making sure that everything is playing back the way it's supposed to, and then producers making sure everything stays on schedule. So I would actually rank them: design, engineering, QA, producers, VFX, animation.
Got it. Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna shift the conversation a little bit towards student applications. So we've gotten a couple of audience questions let's see. Charles William Key says, any job hunting tips for sound designers looking to land their first role, which is echoed by Miles Carricker on our Discord. How do you recommend getting a start at a company of any size, really? Because entry-level positions in audio are kind of few and far between, it seems.
I'm gonna kick things off and then pass the mic. A lot of what folks are looking for, from my experience, I've never been a hiring manager myself, but I have been part of interview loops and stuff like that for new hires. My perspective is that a lot of it will hinge on, you know, demo reels or audio tests that they may provide to those who have who have resumes or provide applications that are strong enough to get to that step. And that is a challenge because it's basically a test based on the taste of the person who you don't know who is making those decisions, or the team, and also the specifics of the work that they might be trying to focus this role on that you might not even know about when you do the test or show them your reel. They may really be wanting someone to focus on weapon sounds or UI sounds or something like that. And if you don't have that, or you didn't focus on that in the work that you're showing them, then they might prefer somebody else who did. One of the things that I always like to recommend, because it's something that worked for me and something I see do well, is technical prowess and implementation is a great way to get your resume to stand out from a lot of others in this field. By which I mean, look into getting certified in middleware like Wise and Fmod, learning how audio works in popular engines, try your hand at implementation, mixing. These are skills I believe that can really get you to stand out in a field of applicants in those first few steps of cutting applications. And, you know, recognize that a lot of this stuff it's rare to find these positions where you're a jack of all trades. It's much, I think you more likely to get a good hit if you try specializing in something, like UI sound effects, like explosions and weapons. Like, really, if you're looking for work, pick a thing that you think you're strong at and really try and explore that and understand if it's game audio specifically you want to be in. How do you randomize your effects? How do you put them in the world so that they sound good in the final finished product? If you can really start to accomplish those things, audio teams that are looking to hire are often aware of what their weakness is as a team. They go, well, none of us are really good at explosions, and we're going to be making a game that's going to take a ton of explosions, and you know, that person's, it's not going to be their entire job, but it is going to be something we're really going to benefit from. And you know, if that's the thing, over time, if you get lucky and that's the role you applied for, then that's where you're going to stand out. Good luck.
Thank you so much for that. Does anyone else have any thoughts on tips, advice for people looking into like starting out in audio industry?
I think I can add a short thing. I feel like there are so many people who can do good sound design, but game is, after all, interactive media, and I think it's really that, oh, your creation is actually working fully in games, because that just doing the linear sound design and implementing it to fully working in an interactive media is really different, and there are a lot of works involved. And I think it's really important to show that you can do that. You know how to make it sound good in game, not just in a video.
I just want to say hard +1 to that, and it kind of jumps off of the previous statement. It's like, often I just joke about, it's like, yeah, sound designing, game audio is sound designing, and like getting it to actually play back the way you want it to in game. Because like like Johnny mentioned, like linear, you press play, it's going to play back exactly the same way every single time. But what if somebody decides, oh, I'm not going to just jump, I'm going to jump in and bash all of my buttons at the same time? Like it still has to work. And like kind of thinking about that whole process was just like, okay, well then now that means it can't be one asset. Now I need two assets. Oh wait, but they could do this too. I need four assets. It's like it's just understanding the space in which you're working in is definitely a huge one.
Yeah, I'll also piggyback on that and say implementation. There was a moment when I was just starting out and I was selected to be a scholar for this program called Game Audio Network Guild. They had a game scholarship that thing happening, and I paired up with a mentor named Chance Thomas, and so I got to have like a one-on-one talk with him at this conference. And at the end of the day, I was like, Chance, I sat with them and asked him like, hey Chance, so if there's one thing that you want me to take back home with me, like out of everything that we talked about today, what would that be? And he said, just master wise, like learn wise, like a deep dive into it, like learn, like just be a wise ninja, like know how to do everything with it. And I really took that to heart. So I went back home, took all the quizzes on the audio kinetics website and really like went through all the 101, 201, 301 classes. And I then hit up like a team that I was working with, and I was like, hey, I would like to implement my own sounds into this thing called with this thing called Wise. And they were like, what is it? I don't know. So I started showing them what it is, and yeah, in 3 months we made this game and we put it up on Steam, and that was like my portfolio piece, and I use that as a part of my application for getting into Riot eventually. So implementation, learning that is like huge, I think.
I just want to add, because I totally agree with everything people are saying. And one of my friends who I met at a conference said it so well, which was, I was young and I was looking for work and asking around and trying to network and make friends in this industry. And he was like, okay, so yeah, you're still looking for that entry level role. He was like, what department, what's your area that you work in? And I was like, audio. And he was like, oh, audio. He said, um, game teams have like maybe 2 or 3 full-time audio professionals, and they're people who have like zero turnover because they're planning to work there until they die. And so it's like you have to wait for someone to retire before you get a job opening, and then like a million people apply. And so it's like, I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. A lot of the people who you may be competing against are people who have this audio background that sometimes even predates video games, right? We have people we work with at Bungie who like, oh yeah, I got into games from radio. I worked on jingles. You know what I mean? Like folks who have been in music creation and sound creation for decades. And so beating them in terms of pure creative applicants is really hard. Beating them from a technical perspective is a much better way to try to strategically get through that, because if they go, well, we're going to teach this new person some of the really intricate audio sound design things we're trying to do, they'll learn that over time. But when it comes to scripting or batch processing or automations or implementation, this is the person who's making us look good. That's a real skill set that can pay you dividends long term. And there's so many ways that helps you stand out.
I think one thing I wanted to add as well, especially when it comes to like, and this is like kind of just going back to your design stuff in general, is to kind of figure out what you like to do. Like oftentimes you get a job over somebody because of the decision that you made, because that's just how you would do that scene. And they instantly like are like, that is really cool. I like the way that you like played out that scene, or I like the way you did X, Y, or Z. Um, so to kind of find your style, like, so that this is not to say that you should ignore like trends, right? Like you should definitely keep up on standards, know what's happening in the industry, kind of mimic some stuff that's like really popular, and try to get as close as possible. But at the end of the day, like more often than not, you'll get the job based on your decisions and things that you choose and what you file to be like, oh, your style is very cool. It's like cool. Kind of starting to develop that trait a little bit.
Awesome. So really quick, we are coming up on 5 minutes left, which like there's a lot of audience questions that I haven't got to, and I still got some things that I want to ask. So it's like very different from what I was expecting. Daniel, you mentioned that you spent a lot of time working on learning WISE. That's WWISE, right? So
Yes.
for anyone listening, any confusion, I'm curious, are there any other like significant tools that audio designers should learn in terms of like things like WISE as a middleware? You folks all work with digital audio workstations. Are there any other tools or more on those tools for people working on audio design?
That's interesting. Because actually, a couple of years ago, I didn't know a single thing about sound design, and I had a sound design mentor who was telling me to just like try to dive in and learn. And I was like, I have never learned this at school. There's like some online resources that I could find on YouTube, like Akash Thakar's YouTube channel has a lot of like good sound design resources on there. But I was like, I don't have any money. I don't know where to start. And yeah, for to start, I think I had this like misconception of like, especially if I want to work at a big AAA company, that I would have to know a specific DAW like Pro Tools. But Riot is actually very fluent with that. They let you use any middleware, and I'm not sure if other studios, but I don't know if they do that as well. But Reaper is a very good DAW to start out with. It's a pretty affordable, very flexible, and actually lets you do a lot of work on there as well. I think for sound designers, like a really great tool that you should get into. Don't spend too much money on like expensive plugins that these like $1,000 reverbs and stuff like that. Rather, I would say like you should try to invest your money into getting good source, like good sound libraries to work off of it. It's kind of like cooking. Someone made a this metaphor before, and I'm just stealing it. But if you try to cook with like all these expensive like frying pans and like spatulas and stuff, but your ingredients are like 5 years old carrots and like 2-year-old potatoes, you can't really make good food with it. You could have like a $10 frying pan, but if you have these great fresh like sound effects, like sources that you can use to like layer them, make new textures, cool sounds that you can use, it's much better. At least in my opinion, I think it yields much better um, sounds out of that. And yeah, I think sound design is actually one of the cheaper career for you to like not have to not waste, invest so much money into getting into without buying so many like expensive stuff. Like art, you have to buy a tablet and like buy all these programs like Maya and go into like schools to get degrees in and stuff. But sound design is all the resources are up there for you on YouTube, and it's really up to you to practice and yeah, just try to do stuff that you can with as much as you can with resources that you have.
Awesome, thanks. Does anyone else have any thoughts on tools for students and people working on learning audio design? Kareem, do you have any like do you use any specialized tools for working with your like dialogue, or is it more or less the same stuff?
We do use a ton of Reaper, in large part because of the scripting elements that allow us to create a lot of automation. Reaper is one of the best tools out there in terms of utilizing scripting tools that will allow you to replicate the same results. You plug in new raw recorded content, and it can add the same elements to it and churn out stuff really well, which is very important for us on our team because we're always dealing with a new release date and another 800 lines of dialogue, usually from characters that already exist in the world. So we know what we want it to sound like. We just need it to process. We call it the processing step. There's some elements of Pro Tools and stuff when it comes to cinematics. There are these timelines that get created and specific elements to files that go to more linear content that works better with that side of software. Wise 100%. Some game development studios plug in better with Fmod, which is another middleware setup that if you have the time and it's got a lot of similarities to Wise. I think Wise in general now is more widely used, but Fmod is also one worth investing time in learning, and it's not expensive. I would just agree. Don't throw a ton of money at things like RX and really expensive plugins if you don't have it. Instead, look at free plugins, look at affordable source material, look at online courses and websites that show you how to use things. And especially if you can get some sort of certification, which is why the Wise website, Audio Kinetic website, is so great, because they have lessons and tests, and when you complete them, you can say you're Wise certified, which is a great thing to have, and it shows the work you put in.
Awesome. So we're running up to the end of our time here, but I really wanted to ask you, Kareem, about your work with diversity and inclusion, and it was Black at Bungie, I believe, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that as we end here?
Yeah, absolutely. The question that I was sort of prepared to talk to specifically is, what do I recommend for studios who want to do more in this space of diversity and inclusion?
Right, perfect.
Right. So it's funny because it reminds me of the longstanding audio complaint as well, which Javon touched on earlier. If you want to do better, you need to include us from the beginning, right? It's not, we can't be an afterthought. So when I say us in this context, I don't just mean Black people, but all underrepresented communities. Include us in your vision for your company, your concept for your next title, your benefits, your social events, your company culture, and recognize that intersectionality exists as well. So you can't say you support Black people if you don't support Black women, Black queer folks, Black people with disabilities, Black immigrants, Black folks with mixed ethnicities, etc. So I'm really happy and get a lot of joy out of the work that I do. At Bungie, the groups that I lead are empowered to work with company leaders and reach out to all employees regarding the issues we care about. And we're really focused on constantly trying to improve company culture and practices to make them more inclusive. So yeah, it's sort of on top of my audio responsibilities. Black at Bungie is an employee resource group. It's a group led by the employees themselves, of which there are several, and they can be started by anyone at the company. There's Women at Bungie, there's Trans at Bungie, and the Bungie Diversity Committee is a more structured group that has direct access to leadership more frequently to speak on behalf of all underrepresented communities and specific ones when needed.
Awesome. I really respect that and those initiatives. Thank you so much for telling us more about that. Really appreciate that. Thank you for everyone on this panel as well. You folks have been amazing. It's been wonderful having every single one of you for this talk. Thank you so much for joining us for this audio panel. With that, we're running low on time. So are there any very quick last remarks before we head out, or how are you feeling? If there's nothing, we're good to go. Okay.
I want to do a quick shout out. I want to do a quick shout out to Real Talk, actually. Kevin Regami. He does Real Talk. It's one of the best free resources for you out there. All audio people, musicians, composers, sound designers, and VO people, and implementation, anything. They will help you with how to set up your best demo reel and your website and stuff like that. 100% would recommend going through as many videos as you can. And yeah, if you don't know what it is, just look up Power Up Audio and Twitch, and Real Talk will show up.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, folks. With that, thank you for the audio or coming to the audio panel.
You mind if I do one real quick?
If we're still on, yes.
Are we
you
still
go
on?
for it.
Oh,
I am. Yeah, go. Just go for it.
Okay, cool. I was gonna tell everybody, it's gonna be a long road. It's gonna be rough. You're gonna hit a lot of bumps. You get a lot of rejection. Don't let that stop you. If it's something that you truly want to do, keep pushing forward. Try to figure out where areas that you can improve at, and keep pushing forward. Asking people for feedback, advice, all that fun stuff. If it's really something that you want to do, keep at it. It'll work out in the end.
Thank you. Awesome.